So the next header definitely doesn't work. Well, it's never going to clear the steering shaft. I don't think any headers are going to clear the steering shaft. But this is actually sitting back behind the exhaust port because it hits the motor mount right here. However, the rest of it looks pretty decent as far as location, assuming, let me back up here, assuming that the engine isn't sitting all the way forward on those slots on the motor mounts. Because if it sits all the way forward, then we've got basically no room right here. After, you know, this would be notched. So I didn't touch on that yet. But so I'm going to pop this thing back out and kind of eyeball how much has to be notched off of this, off that bracket, the motor mount bracket. And if it seems reasonable, then I think I'm going to cut it off, put this back together, and then order the parts to do the steering shaft. Here's the view from up top. So you can see we're about 2 inches back. So assuming this is 2 inches forward, there's no way that this runner is going to clear the factory steering shaft. So that means absolutely I'm going to have to do the straight steering shaft with some kind of mount here, another U-joint going down to the steering rack. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have anything that just bolts in, but at least this header may work after some modifications. Alright, I just looked at this. So this is not as reasonable as I was hoping. So just kind of eyeballing it here. So that, to make this reasonably clear, you're taking off like basically to this line, and that's not reasonable to me. There's not enough strength in this piece without being tied to it. So these headers are a bust as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to find any headers that will fit this. So it really seems like the working combination is a header that's this style, like a quote-unquote block hugger, but have it drop right where the fourth runner is. Because this section right here is where the factory exhaust manifold would drop. So here's the factory piece. So you can see it drops in that little spot right there perfectly. So it's not ideal, but I think I'm going to have to use the factory manifold, short of cutting these headers up and building my own driver's side. I'm not sure exactly what else I could do. I mean, these things are a little ridiculous. I mean, that's not much thicker than my finger. So that's pretty wild. I gotta think about this a little bit. These headers were cheap enough I could cut them up and not worry about it too much. But what a pain in the ass. I did a little bit more eyeing around, and see, if you move this back one runner, it's like perfect. It drops right where it should. And after doing a little bit more eyeing up, it looks like there'd be about ½ inch there to put this header on normally. But this has got me really thinking, I wonder, I just don't have any of this pipe laying around. I'd have to just hope I had enough between the two headers. But cut the flange off, move it forward, use these two, extend this one to runner 1, And then, well, I'd probably have to cut off the collector and relocate it to right about there. You know what? At that point, I should just buy a builder's kit. Okay. I gotta think about this more. There's possibilities. So I went ahead and did it. Cut the flange off. That wasn't a whole ordeal. And then moved the header back one runner. Tacked it. It sits in there. I mean, the steering shaft, there's no way to make it work with the stock one unless I modify this runner, which I don't really want to mess with the collector. So I don't think that's going to happen. Otherwise, I guess I could just put a big ass dent in it, and that might clear. It also depends on how far forward and back the engine goes, because the farther forward it comes, the more interference it'll have. So I really have to get the transmission on before I can nail that down. But that fourth runner, that old fourth runner, just cutting off the old elbow that would have gone like that. Now, granted, this is not the greatest representation of a normal bend, but let's see if we can focus. There you go. But there's a space there that I can snake this pipe up and then run it parallel and drop it into this runner. So maybe use this piece here. You know, just eyeballing it. This port is obviously oddly shaped, but I think I can make this work. And then come back, mock this up, then come back and see if I can get that steering shaft to work. If not, then I've already got the pieces queued up in a Amazon cart. I can buy all of them. So I'm going to keep on hammering this out and seeing what I can come up with. I've got plenty of scrap parts to use. After some fab work, this is where I'm at. And you know, if I get lucky and the engine is that far back, number 3, the third runner back there actually clears the steering shaft, or, well, I mean, it's not in all the way, but it's going to only require a minor dent there. Now, what the bigger issue is that this first runner that I put here is now hitting way up there. But, I mean, as you can see, it's pretty close to being on. So, what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll pop this back out, shave off about a 1/2 inch, and then to suck this runner in closer. One of the other mock-ups that I did, I had a shorter radius elbow here, but the rest of the pieces didn't really work out. But this was like perfect. There's room back there. It's just barely touching the insulation on the firewall. So with some header wrap, that shouldn't be an issue. So I mean, I'm pretty happy with this so far. I'm going to take you under so you can see where it comes out. Alrighty. So, you can see this is like, well, let me go wide angle. So that's pretty much perfect spot to drop. Come right underneath of it. You know, there's going to be enough room here to do a tight radius elbow, tight radius 90, and then chop it to like a 45 and shoot that crossover pipe down here, and then up and over. So that worked out really nicely. And you can see there's that last runner. I can actually put my fingers in between if I squeeze them. So it's not a lot of clearance, but there's clearance there. All right, knock this thing back out. Here's the final result. I managed to pull the pipe about a 1/2 inch closer all the way down to the engine, and now it's all welded up. So, I mean, I'm using a MIG here, so not the greatest welds. Welded on the inside all the way around, and then kind of just did what I could to tack weld as much as I could to keep that flange as flat as possible, and then used some water and a rag to try to manage some of the heat. But all the other joints are welded up, good to go. I'm going to throw this thing back in. And here we are. First runner clears the steering shaft. It's actually installed. Second runner would, in this position, engine position, would just need a small dent. And the third runner would just need a small dent. However, I don't know if I'm going to get that lucky, because you can see that motor mount is as far back as it will go. So I don't know where this thing's actually going to sit until I bolt that transmission up. So hindsight's always 20/20. Had I cut off 3/8 of an inch or so from the first 3 runners that I tack welded on, I probably would have completely cleared the stock steering shaft and had some room to spare. But, you know, it is what it is. So think I'm at a point really where I have to bolt the transmission on to see basically what fits and what doesn't, where these motor mounts are actually going to live. So, wish me luck. I'm out here doing this by myself.